What is Agile all about anyway? Well, I want to show you. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast. Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams. Greetings, everybody, and thank you for tuning in and checking out the podcast. I'm really happy to have you here. What is Agile? I've been hearing all about it. I've maybe even been doing a little bit of it, but I could really use a good introduction to the core concepts so that I know if I'm on the right path. Well, listen, if you like to learn using podcasts, you're in the right place because I'm going to give you an overview of Agile, introducing you to the core concepts, its original intention as designed by its creators, how to use it, what to watch out for, and how to make sure that you're constantly learning and growing. Why does that matter? Because I'm going to get you started with the basics, and I want you to take those basics and start your Agile practice today. This is an area where I don't want you to feel like you have to take a year-long course or even a month-long course or even a week-long course in order to get started. Agile is fundamentally simple. You can take what I teach you today and start right now. So let's begin. The reason why you're hearing so much about Agile is because it's turned product delivery on its head. In the software development industry, it's now used pretty much everywhere, and it's used everywhere because done right, it has the potential to make product delivery more cost-effective. And because it has the potential to do that, you have to make sure that you at least have some kind of Agile strategy in your toolbox because your competitors are doing it. And they're not going to wait politely for you to catch up. So I don't want to say it's a change or die situation, but it's pretty close. Now that may sound like bad, menacing news, but the reality is, Agile is breathtakingly simple. I believe that what the Agile industry doesn't want you to know is that Agile is about us stripping away. It's about simple, fundamental concepts. It's about doing the most important things first, not just going faster. It's about focusing better. It's about insisting on excellent quality so that we can have happier clients and happier teams. And by the way, happier teams make better things. And sometimes they make better things faster. Let's talk about the history for a moment. Now, you can easily find the history of Agile anywhere online, so I won't bore you with the details. But what matters is, at some point in the history of software development, as an industry, we realized that we were spending too much time planning, examining, and thinking about what we were going to build. And too frequently, we didn't ask the right people what should be built. So at the end of the day, we spent a really long time developing things that, statistically speaking, sometimes upwards of 80% of those features never got used. And year in and year out, there was this grueling problem, this shameful stat, that again, upwards of 80% of IT projects were delivered late with the wrong scope. So things were costing way more than they should, taking way longer than they should, and showing up with way less quality than we could reasonably call acceptable. Numerous complicated methodologies were stirred up to try to solve this problem, and each of them struggled because they simply added more complexity, which did nothing to cheapen or improve the business of delivering software. And at the end of the day, the information technology industry should be about providing solutions. It has to run at least at the speed of business or better, or we're not serving our customers. Does that make sense? So Agile emerged as a response to those current and stubborn conditions. A bunch of people sat in a room and said there has to be a better way. And complexity and increasingly complex methodologies wasn't doing the job. So I believe what happened is a return to simplicity, a stripping away of the complexity to reveal how do the best teams deliver the best work in the shortest period of time. What do they do? And let's model those behaviors. What emerged from that is 12 Agile principles. Now you'll notice something. Nothing in these principles tells you how to do it. The how of agility is entirely flexible. Agile is about the why. And you know what I found? If you want to be effective at implementing Agile, one of the first things you have to do is work around the mythology. There's a lot of bad information out there about what Agile is and how to implement it properly. The reason for this podcast is to help guide you to right practice and right thinking. Let's take a glance at the principles. The first Agile principle is that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. To me, that makes perfect sense. The most important work we do is give customers things that they want. What's important in that statement is the concept of early and continuous, which means one big procedural change in agility is that we'll no longer big bang drop a product at the end of the development cycle. We will deliver it starting early and continuously. If you think about the apps that you use on your smartphone today, you probably have an app store where you can go in and see what pieces of software have been updated, and you may notice that most of the major software products or apps update every week or every 2 weeks, religiously. They don't do that because they're terrible at getting it right the first time. They do that because they are continuously releasing small increments and improvements on a regular cadence. Think of any app that you use every single day. Think about the last time you saw a major overhaul in terms of a completely redesigned interface or a completely new basket of features. It probably doesn't happen that often, if ever. Instead, you may have noticed that the app morphs and changes and improves and inherits new features slowly over time. That's agility. And how do they know which features to put in the software? Generally, user demand and feedback. The second Agile principle is that we welcome changing requirements even late in development. I love the second part of this sentence. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Being able to turn on a dime, for example, implementing a feature, putting it into the marketplace, and having customers say, no, that's not what we wanted. We wanted this instead. And then being able to react to that with very low cost and very low latency is what makes you competitive, because it allows you to bring the right features to the marketplace before your next door neighbor. Now remember, you might be wondering, well, how do we do that? Agile is not about telling you how. It is about telling us that we must. The way you do that, how you structure your organization and your activities to enable that, is highly flexible. More on that in a moment. Now here's another thing that I want you to remember, is that principles like this are not limited to software. If your job is to create training modules, if your job is to hire staff or create compensation packages, if your job is to build sales pitches or presentations, you too can welcome changing requirements late in development. So it's not about adding a help button to your application. It could as easily be adding a new slide to your sales deck. It could be about tweaking the language in your training materials based on user feedback. It could be about changing a job description or posting based on the fact that you're not getting enough quality candidates applying for your job. This is why agility is so popular, because it has heavy-duty implications way far-reaching beyond software delivery. The third Agile principle is to deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference to the shorter timescale. See, that's brand new. Somewhere in the 1990s, when software became something that was in every household, we expected that products would take a year to 2 years to fully develop, and that's when we would see a new release on the shelves in our favorite stores. Well, now that's too long to wait. Business landscapes can change in a matter of weeks, and the products that we deliver to support that have to be ready in time. The fourth Agile principle is that business people and developers work together daily throughout the project. Yes, hand in hand. One of the easiest ways to stop making features that nobody wants is to ask the people who want them how it should look. There are too many developers and even business analysts assuming what a feature should be. There are too many business people who submit their requirements via a proxy and never show up in the room to work hand in hand with the people who make it. The results are about as good as the results would be if you started a kitchen renovation and gave them absolutely no information about what you wanted and gave them absolutely no feedback throughout the process. The chances are that you end up with something completely different than what you initially envisioned is very high. The fifth principle: build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. Absolutely. If you want a high-performing team, they have to want to be there, they have to love what they do, and the easiest way to do that is to trust them to make the decisions that they need to make to deliver what they believe is the best for the customer based on the information the customer has provided. If you don't trust them to do the job they were hired to do, then what'd you hire them for? This should be simple. And yet, how often do we feel that we need to micromanage, monitor, and dashboard other people's work? The truth is, you don't. The sixth principle is that agile processes should promote sustainable development. Sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. The traditional way of doing things is that we go at a certain pace for a really long time, and then when we get to the deadline 8 months later, we have the holy uh-oh moment, and then everybody's working 12 to 16 hours a day to try and get things done on time. That causes people to burn out. So to counterbalance that, sometimes we create processes where people just work 10 hours a day every day. That tends to not work either, and that is still too much. Agile processes are supposed to be set up so that the pace is not only even and manageable, but more importantly, allows bidirectional communication and feedback to communicate when there is too much work for a given team size. I love number 7, you will too. Working software is the primary measure of progress. Something is either done or not done. In Agile, we prefer to focus on done things, not ing things. Ing things being thinking, planning, meeting, trying, working. Those are not done things. In Agile, we want to see finished software. How do I know what the status is, what the progress is against the finished deliverable? The 8th Agile principle is that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. Absolutely. How much lag time do we create by sending decisions up the chain only to have them sit in a queue for days or even weeks before they come back down the chain? If you have a truly empowered team, they can answer most of those questions for themselves. But for the times when we need answers from somebody else, the best way to do that is a face-to-face conversation. Not email, not chat, not telephone. Person to person is best. And take a quick sanity check. Notice I didn't tell you how to accomplish that. All we said was we should. The 9th principle: continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. That's a complicated one, but it's a good myth buster. A lot of times the chatter around Agile is that it introduces speed at the cost of quality. If you introduce speed and quality suffers, you've done it wrong. There is nothing about Agile that wants us to go faster, but make products that break or don't meet customer needs. Principle number 10. So you see, I didn't make this up. It's baked right into the Agile principles. Simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. Continuous aggressive attention to cutting the fat, cutting the waste, reducing the size and the weight of processes that add very little value but introduce most of the delay and lag and overhead is a practice that up to this date, most of us don't engage in, and Agile reminds us that we must. Number 11, the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Let the professionals come together and decide who does what and when in what sequence. The job of the micromanager or the project manager, maybe it doesn't entirely go away, but certainly should be focused more on facilitating and enabling teams, clearing obstacles, getting them the things that they truly need, rather than managing their time and plotting it out from beginning to end. Here's the reality about project management I'd like you to consider. Is it truly possible to imagine all of the things that all of the people will have to do and how long it will take them so that they happen in perfect sequence when the thing you're planning is 12 months long? No, it's impossible. You can't plan for sickness. You can't plan for changing course. And the more you bake a plan that is that detailed into stone, the higher the cost of changing it when you need to pivot on a dime. And remember Agile principle number 2, we welcome changing requirements. The 12th and final principle is that at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective and then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Now, in the project world, we do something called a post-mortem. The post-mortem happens after the project is dead, which is absolutely the wrong time to do it because the only time that benefits you is on the next project. Well, wouldn't it have been nice to have some of that feedback and to make the changes early on the current project? That makes perfect sense. So that's another practice that we need to change. So now when people talk about what is Agile, now you know. Now you have something concrete that you can look up on the internet and show them those 12 principles. I didn't make them up. They're there for everyone to see and use. When you search for what is Agile on the internet, you may encounter something called the Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto is a summarization of those 12 principles into the following 4 statements. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And responding to change over following a plan. Reactions to this manifesto can be mixed. A lot of people respond violently to the idea of working software over comprehensive documentation because they interpret it to mean we shall not do comprehensive documentation, or worse, we won't do documentation at all. Well, listen, the way the manifesto was written to mean is that we prefer the first item over the second item. It doesn't mean we're not going to do the second item. We just like the first one better and consider it more valuable. So, for example, we prefer working software over comprehensive documentation. And if I have a choice on which to spend the greater balance of my time on, I think you'll agree. I'd rather build software that works than build documents that nobody's going to read because my software's broken. The manifesto is a great summary, but in my experience, what people really need to get their heads around are the 12 principles because it is very specific about where we should be focusing our minds and focusing our actions to improve the process of delivering valuable working product to the people who pay our bills, the customer. Now, with all of that said, you may be saying, wow, that's a lot of information. 12 new rules representing massive culture change, massive mindset change, and probably brand new processes to support them. Sounds scary. Sounds like there's a lot to do. Here's what I believe. There is nothing about Agile that a bunch of smart, committed, focused individuals wouldn't get done anyway. Have you ever had a team working on a critical problem? Let's say the family's gathered around for a holiday dinner, and all of a sudden a grease fire breaks out. People will swarm around the problem, and initially at first it may be a little bit clumsy, but pretty quickly, because of the urgency of the situation, people get their heads together and figure out the best way to solve the problem. In fact, in the space mission for Apollo 13, there were a whole bunch of things that went wrong that doomed that mission, and at one moment they realized that on top of all the other problems they were having, they were running out of breathable air in the cabin because the ship had separated into 2 parts, everyone was huddled into one part, but the air filters for that part were in the other part of the spaceship. Now, there's no way you can take a Home Depot run or have some parts sent up from Earth. These guys were in space. So back at Mission Control, a team of people sat around and figured out how can we solve this problem using only materials that can be found in the portion of the space shuttle where they're sitting. Parts from spacesuits, duct tape, plastic bags, hoses, clips, and what's the simplest procedure that we can radio up so that these guys can fix the problem? Because at the end of the day, the purpose, the why, was so compelling, was so important, and that is we are not going to lose any of the souls aboard that craft. Those men are coming home. When you put people together with a common sense of massive purpose, people will organize to get the right things done in the most efficient way they possibly can. Let me add some extra flavor to that. In my daily practice, I summarize those 12 Agile principles like this. The keys to Agile success is you have to get visionary, you have to get focused, you have to get humble and flexible, and you have to get gritty. Now here's what I mean. Getting visionary refers to the fact that we should be working with our customers' needs in mind. We should know who we're serving, why we're serving them, and how best to do so. Getting focused refers to the idea that we should remove all distractions, put the people who are working on this project face to face in a room together to minimize lags, to minimize waste, and we should be striving to deliver the most valuable, high-priority items first. Getting humble and getting flexible refers to the ability to turn and adapt on a dime. It also refers to the fact that it's okay to fail. We don't know what we don't know, and the only way to learn it is to try and experiment. Show it to the customer, see what happens, let them feedback, and based on their feedback, implement the learning right now. Getting humble also means letting go of our preconceived notions of how we plan for projects and how we avoid risk and how we protect our investment. Those things need to change because the way we've been doing it in the past has not been working. And then finally, get gritty refers to the fact that you're going to have to jump in, come up with a plan, have that plan go completely into the garbage bin when something changes, and be totally okay with getting up tomorrow and doing the same thing again. It means being brave enough to look at our own performance and realize where we're coming up short and how we could improve. And at the end of the day, if all of these principles seem like it's a lot of change and it's a lot of risk, just remember this. In our current era, in order to stay competitive, you need to focus on go. You need to be able to leap. You need to be able to put product in front of customers as fast as they want to see it while protecting quality and integrity. That's what Agile is meant to help you do. The how of Agile, that is to say, how are we going to make real all of those 12 principles, lies in the techniques that are commonly available called Scrum, Kanban, Lean, Scrumban, and there's a myriad others. And those concepts definitely require a little more in-depth examination. But for now, what I want you to take away is that from a digital perspective, we are charged with using all of this new technology to serve our customers better. And to do that, we have to break the traditional models of thinking. And it might help to recall that those traditional models are deeply nested in the industrial age, when people couldn't be connected face-to-face if geography prohibited it, where communications were never instantaneous, where the levels of education are nowhere near as high as they are today. So we had to create complex, detailed, end-to-end processes for people to follow. All of those things have changed now, so the old way of doing things is exactly that, old and antiquated. It's time for you and your teams to get agile. I hope this has clarified the real meaning of agility. It has debunked some of the myths and simplified the concepts and made them real for you. Because ultimately, my hope and my goal is to get Agile up and running for as many of you as I possibly can. Folks, thank you for listening. You can reach out at badassagile.com or find me on Twitter at badass_agile. We'll see you next time, and until then, stay badass.